Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly live. Today, we have a wonderful, very special guest, Nadège Minois or Minois?
Minois.
Minois. Okay, perfect. So Nadège is a project management and communication consultant with a diverse background in academia, research, and global business. She's worked in multiple industries, helping organizations optimize and process to improve collaboration on complex projects. Today, we're going to lean into that construction element of how she does this. Nadège has a very impressive academic foundation with experience at teaching at a university level and conducting research. Her career also spans to various international environments, making her a very unique asset for navigating business challenges and cross-cultural communications. She's known for her ability to adapt and tackle tough problems. So, Nadège, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show. I'm really looking forward to it. And I hope I'll stand up to this wonderful introduction.
Well, thank you. I kind of stumbled through that one. I haven't had my full cup of coffee yet. I was telling you right before we hopped on, fully expect me to have some coffee. It's still morning time and I still have to get my 3 cups in, it feels like. So, Nadège, both of us have a very heavy construction audience on our LinkedIn. So I think one of the first things that we should address right out of the gate might be something that's a little bit more simple for you, but let's dumb it down just a little bit. Why is communication important for construction projects?
Well, first of all, any kind of project, communication is important. It's, I think, especially important. So also, yes, as you said, I've got quite a few connections in the construction industry, and then I hope they are listening to us now, or that they will catch up the replay. But I want to admit that it's not my main expertise, but from what I've seen, from my experience, I think something that can make construction sometimes a bit difficult in terms of communication is that the various people involved in the project, in a construction project, any kind of people, the people funding the project, the people who are going to live or work or do whatever in the building being constructed, or the workers working, all these people, they are there at different times. And so communication can be quite tricky because, a lot of the time you just don't see other people, because that's, that the thing, there's a certain sequence in a building site. And so when your job is to arrive towards the end of the sequence of that work, you may not have communicated with the people coming at the beginning of the sequence, okay? And if you have a very good person overseeing the whole thing very efficiently, that's okay, because that person will be the kind of liaison between all that. But if it happens that something has gone through the cracks and things like that, basically, you arrive and suddenly you realize you can't do your job for whatever reason, or something before hasn't been done right, or not as was expected, or not when it was expected, and so I think that lapse of time between the different people involved in the project can make communication particularly difficult, I think, on construction projects.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So, what would the financial impact be to an organization if their communication, if let's say you have two, one has really perfected communication, their team works really cohesively, had a lot of training, and then you have another who they have really good staff members, but maybe not as strong in the communication? What would that impact be on their financials, if any?
Well, it will probably have a knock-on impact on your financial, because usually in construction, any setback, anything that wasn't planned properly, that wasn't communicated properly, will mean delays. And delays, well, mean financial knock-on, because you have to pay people for longer. It's not unusual in the contract that you have to pay penalties if you deliver a project late and things like that. So basically, financially, it will have some consequences. Definitely, yes.
So, whenever, just to get a glimpse into your world, whenever you are working with people, well, I guess let's start there. What are you doing? What are you actively working on? I know you have a lot of experience, as I introduced you, in academia and teaching. You have a podcast, but what is the core thing that you're working on right now?
So I would say there are two strands to my work, and one is what we're talking about. It's about communication. Okay, so it means that I will work with project managers as individuals, or also with their teams, or the whole organization, to put in place efficient communication channels and ways of communicating. Sorry, you talked about international experience, and so cross-cultural aspects of communication, and it's not in terms of coming from different countries. In the cultures of the various companies involved on a construction site will be different. So you need to understand these cultures and how other people work and how they communicate, to be able to communicate efficiently with them. So that's one strand. That's my main strand. And the other strand is that what I realize is there's quite a lot of business struggling with their projects, because basically they are small. They are small businesses. So within the business, they don't have the expertise. They're too small. They're not going to have full-time project managers. It doesn't make sense. But of course, they don't have the expertise. So they have all these projects, but they don't know how to do them and all that kind of things. And so that's my second strand, if I can say, to make project management easy, and specifically for small businesses. So that's my two strands.
So that's got to keep you busy. So we talked about international business and communication. So just so people have a full picture of your background and your experience, where are you from? Where all of you live? Tell me about that. I want to know a little bit more.
So I'm from France. I was born there, and that's where I spent the first 25 years of my life. And then, so you talked about academia. So yes, after my PhD, that's when I began moving around, basically from kind of jobs to jobs in various universities, research institutes. And so I moved first to the United States. I spent 2 years in Minnesota. And then I went back to Europe, and I spent some years in Germany, in Austria, in Scotland. And now for 2.5 years, I'm back to France.
Wow. Your English is phenomenal for growing up in France for 25 years.
Yeah, that was a steep learning curve when I moved to Minnesota, and I've got to learn English properly.
Absolutely. Well, you've done a
Yeah,
great job, and I think it helps to prove
thank
your point
you.
a little bit more that you're able to say, if I can communicate with you after knowing, growing up in a completely different culture, then you can communicate with your team. So, love that. So, I want to hop back to the project. Wow, coffee. I want to hop back to the
Have one more
project.
sip.
I know, I know. That's I tell people, and they're like, "Oh, really?" It's like, "Yes, you don't understand. I do need it." So, if I'm quiet, it's not a big deal. But if I'm talking to somebody, absolutely. So I want to hop back to the project management communication. So I think some things that people are really interested in are some actionable tips. But before we get into that, I want to talk about what are some really common mistakes that you see teams make, beyond the miscommunications. What are some common, very simple miscommunication tips that people make that they can go to
Mm,
correct very
mm,
easily?
mm. So, from experience, from what I've seen three main types of miscommunication in project management. The first one is the lack of communication. Okay, so people just don't know what is happening with the project. Team members are not clear about what they have to do, when, what it's about. So basically the lack of communication. So for that, I would say it might sound obvious, but it is missing in a lot of cases. It's just communicate. Okay, so regularly, it doesn't have to be long. You don't have to have a 2-hour team meetings, but basically just communicate, have regular check-ins, especially with your team members and your key stakeholders. Okay, it might just take a few minutes. Some will prefer emails and things like that. So whatever they prefer, but communicate. Then the other one is the opposite, is that you have a communication, it's just a scattergun approach. You're telling everything to everyone. So basically, you drown people under that weight of communication, of emails, of messages, of voicemails, on whatever meetings to decide another thing and talk about another thing, and so basically here it means that in any project you need to identify your stakeholders. So who are your stakeholders and who are you going to communicate with? Because some of them, it's just once in a while, they just need to be informed once in a while about what's going on. So you really need to do that exercise, understand the different level of communication you need with your stakeholders. Okay, obviously your team members, the project sponsor, you have to communicate regularly with them. The people who are going to use the buildings that you are building, you communicate with them. Well, you agree with them how often you're going to communicate to basically tell them about the progress and how you're going to communicate to them about a setback that you have, or if you need a decision. Oh, by the way, this room, what color did you want the walls? Or whatever. But basically, so you've got this type of people where you communicate. You need to communicate, but less often. And then you've got the people once in a while, you just need to keep them informed, and maybe a newsletter or something like that. And so that's the second mistake, communicating too much. And then the third mistake is that you may communicate at the right level, but you don't communicate the right information. And so again, here, identify your stakeholders, identify what they need to know about the project. Ask them what they want to know, what they need to know about the project, and deliver that to them. Yeah. So that's the thing. And and I think it's especially important in construction because, we talked about that people come and go at different times, but they're also in different locations, and you may be a company and you will actually work on several construction sites at the same time, and so you need to ensure, you need to have the communication channels in place. And so you need to really also understand with your team what is the best way. Do I send you, whatever, a text message because you're not here, a text message, or would you rather have a quick meeting on the company site before you all go off to your various construction sites, or however people are more comfortable with. But these are different ways, types of miscommunication, and how you can to try and avoid them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And depending on what team members you're doing, the mistakes sounds like it could potentially be different. There's some people that you could really over communicate to, the people that are actually on the ground, on the job site working, and then you could under communicate to your stakeholders. So it's important to have good organizational structures in place to manage that. Do you have any tips on that for these project managers that are, especially on some high stakes projects? They're very fast. They've got high demands, big budgets. They have to get this stuff done quickly. How do you approach organizing that?
So in terms of communication, I think one big thing is to ask for feedback before you try to organize things, because the first step is to know what you need to organize.
Yeah.
Okay. So you ask for feedback, because it's true that usually, it's easy to talk about project management communication. It's the project manager talking to the stakeholders, the team members, and things like that. Now it's two ways, it's giving and receiving. So it is to ask the feedback, and when I mentioned earlier, well, ask people what they need to know, what they want to know, how they want it communicated, and things like that. How often? And then once you have that, you can organize. And usually you have, what is called a communication management plan. So who are you going to communicate to? Who is going to communicate with these people? Because don't think that because you're in charge of the project, you have to do all the communication. No, that's also a mistake that you can say. No, you don't have to, So who is going to do the communication, to say what, by which channel, in which format, even if they say, oh, I want an email. Well, okay, but some people, they will want a block of text because that speaks to them. Some people will want to see a graph with whatever lines, bars, or what, because that speaks to them. Some people will want a table with numbers. So just these little things like that. And then you organize all that in your communication plan. And then basically to organize things is that you make sure that you follow the plan. And so you ensure that, when you say, okay, we're going to send this to that person and about this and that it is ready and it is sent, it is communicated.
Yeah. This communication organization plan, about how long would it take a team to compile that? Because depending on the person, if you've got really bad OCD or you're a really organized person, this seems like it could be a task that takes a long time. So where are we at? What's the average time that it takes people that you work with to complete that?
So it's good to block some times to do that, but it's definitely where in terms of days, days, which could be scattered over over a few weeks, because you need to identify the people, your stakeholders. Okay, so you need to understand their relationship to the project. You need to know how you're going to communicate with them. You need to know what you're going to communicate to them, who is going to communicate to them, and then to put all that into place. And so when you need to ask people, you have to fit with their availability, and so definitely we're talking to gather all the information and things like that. We're talking in terms of days, and then putting all that together.
Have you
So
seen
yeah.
companies start to use AI to help streamline that or just improve the time that it takes to create that plan? Or is that something that you haven't seen people dive into yet in construction?
I haven't seen personally, but I know, yes, yeah. Some people, yeah, you can definitely do that. I would say probably as a starter, and particularly for the identification, if you're not sure, you can explain what your project is about and things like that, and that kind points you to some categories of stakeholders. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any softwares that you recommend for making a communication organization plan?
Sometimes a spreadsheet is the easiest.
Yeah.
So it can just be a spreadsheet. Then any kind of project management software, you will be able to basically set that up. And then you may have some software, like I know in Microsoft and things that they, where you can even set up, for instance, notifications and things like that. So quite a lot of software could help you. And beginning with just a spreadsheet, but then after that, it's to understand what else you want to do and exactly what are your needs, because you don't want to begin to use something and then you want to do something else and it doesn't do it, so you need another system and another system. But at the same time, if you need to do that, you may not need to go for a system that can do that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and most companies are probably already going to have their project management software in place. But for
yeah.
those that aren't familiar with that side of it, maybe they use it for other key aspects of the project, but they're not really using it to full on make a chart. It's good to at least explore it. Or I guess from what you're saying, just start with a spreadsheet and then
Yes.
work your way up.
Yeah.
Well, we've got lots of comments, so I'm going to go through them real quick.
Yes.
So Babadell, so he said, pay personnel for standby or downtime. This is what we were talking about earlier. The downsides to not communicating and not communicating effectively is you've got a lot of people, and I think this applies to any business. You've got a lot of people standing around. They're answering emails that don't necessarily need to be answered. They're making spreadsheets that aren't super necessary just to fill their time. So I don't think this fully goes just for project management. So
no, that's right. That's right. If and when that happens, then of course there is a planning of the project. That of course in your planning, although you want to have some contingency, so it may happen that people have downtime. But you want to do your project plan basically in a way that there are not too much downtime for the people, because you don't want longer than you need to deliver the project. But yes, no, that absolutely that's right. Right. Yeah.
Vanessa said that she's excited about this session.
Thank you, Vanessa.
And then Timothy said, this is a very good question. are there differences in how generations communicate at work, like
Yeah.
boomers compared to millennials, Gen Y? That's a great question.
Yes. Yeah. There's the big intergenerational gap on how people communicate. That's for sure. Well, we could spend hours on that, but basically, relatively briefly, that will come in different ways. That older people like baby boomers and older generations, usually it's not unusual to have these people a little bit more formal, and then younger people are, well, you might say, are more easygoing.
Absolutely.
So there are things like that. So if you want to be a boomer and you want to be called Mrs. X or Mr. Y, and that this new 22-year-old recruit, hello Mike, hello.
Yeah.
Well, you may not like it. So yeah, there's a difference. So there's a difference in that, in the way of communicating, whether it is the formality of the communication, but also the channels of
Yeah.
communication. The channels of communication. I've read things basically saying young people, they just don't answer their phone. So they will be on text, so they will like text and online messaging and things like that, and emails, and but try to speak to them,
Like a
whether
phone call.
like a phone call, just a phone call, hello, or maybe in a meeting face to face with them, they will have more problems with that than boomers will be, because of course in our time, phone calls were quite, and obviously face to face meetings were the way to go. And so then for younger generations, they're less comfortable actually with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to dive further into this because I know you said that you could talk about this for hours. So I want to keep exploring this topic
Yeah.
because it's going to just become more and more relevant. We have a lot of people retiring. We have a lot of people handing over businesses, especially as every time we in the United States get a new political party in office, things change, you get new tariffs, all that kind of stuff. And it causes some of the people that have been in this industry forever to just put their hands up and say, I'm done. And so I feel like this is a natural cycle. So how can young people be prepared when exiting college, exiting the different trade schools, to embark on this journey of working with some people that are ready to, I guess, boomers, if you will, but people that are ready to retire and get out?
Well, I know that in the education system they don't prepare you for real work, unfortunately. So it might be to try and get a little bit of work experience, to see if in the summer you can hang around a company for 2 or 3 weeks and things like that, and see how they do things, to see the differences. When you get your job, first job and things like that, ask people how it works here, how they want to be addressed, and things like that, and also tell them, for you what, and I know that there's a lot, I see that a lot. People say, oh, these young people, they're not serious, they don't take work seriously, and they're ready to jump ship. And in my time, you were getting your first job and staying in the same company, you're all professional life, your old career, you wouldn't move, and now they're ready to change ship because they don't like something, so they go somewhere else. And so there's a lot of criticism, but it's
Yeah.
we can change that. That's the way it is. Cultures evolve. That's what people now are looking for in a job. They are not just looking for a pay or security. They are looking for an experience,
Yeah.
basically.
Why do you think that is? Why you have people that are complaining that they've been in the same industry or the same company for 30 plus years, and then they see the young people jumping ship, but in reality they are likely jumping ship for better pay, better benefits, better experience. So there's got to be a more motivated reason. So from
Yeah.
opposing perspective there, it doesn't seem necessarily like a bad thing, except for the longevity and you want more time with the company. So why do you think there is so much criticism there? Do you think part of it's resentment that they didn't do the same thing?
It could be, yes. It's just that, well, it's also a lot that, well, one of the best compliment you can tell someone, usually, well, you think it's the best compliment, is to tell someone that they're like you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think that that's the thing, because people can't, why aren't they like me? Basically, this is my values, this is how I see the world. And so if it is how I see the world, it is how the world should be, and that's it. And basically they don't fit with that. And it's just, it's not one way. Okay, so the younger generation will also complain about these people close to retirement, about how they do things and how inflexible or whatever, or so it's just a matter that we see the world through our own eyes, and if we're not used, and most of us are not, I say, gosh, I might be able to do that. Well, yeah, because I've spent half of my life outside in different cultures and still working internationally with people from all over the world. But still, it doesn't mean that, you may not open your eyes. But luckily, I was able to open my eyes and to say, well, okay, this may be how I see the world, but there are many other different perspectives that are as valid as mine. They're different. They're as valid. They're different, but they're there. They exist, and I should respect that. And so I think that's probably a big thing of what is missing. That basically we just don't think in terms of differences. We think in terms of similarities, and that if it's not like we think it's just not good, basically. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about communication tips, but getting a little bit more realistic, getting a little bit more practical here. It seems like once first impressions mean a lot. Right. So if you're entering a workforce, you're new on a project and you're working with somebody, it's maybe at Timothy's example, a millennial or a Gen Y and then a boomer. And you've got these two people working together, and the boomer is resentful because the Gen Y just got out of school, thinks they know everything. They've learned it all recently, so they know all the new stuff. But then you've got the boomer that's been in the industry for 30, 40 years and has been doing it the same way forever, and a tried and true way they know that works. So that's naturally going to create a significant barrier, which could rub off as the more that they talk to their counterparts and create some real divide. So what advice do you have to maybe the young people, the boomers, project managers, whoever? What advice do you have to overcoming this? Because this is a real problem, whether it's talked about or not.
Well, for young people just entering the workforce or going to enter the workforce, what I what I would advise is that there is something called professionalism, and that the kind of standards that you just need to follow for people to think that you do a good job. And actually a real professional will even go beyond that. Okay, so basically it's completely different from school. The standards are different, and it's not, and it goes for everyone in the organization. It's not about you, it's about the organization. Okay, you're coming into a workplace to bring value, to contribute to that workplace, and so you have to understand how you fit, what you can bring to that workplace. And when I say how you fit, I'm not saying you need to change who you are and things like that. No, but how you fit in that puzzle to bring value to the workplace. And that's what everyone in a workplace should aim for. How do I bring value to that workplace? Of course, while still being satisfied in the job, and of course you have your personal, but to see that in with that lens. How do I bring value? What do I need to do to bring value?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head, as we say, with respect, because I think that is something, and I'm not really sure where that came from. I'm sure we can find out, but I feel like it's a thing with younger people that they don't know how to say this politely, but they don't care about authority. They have less respect over authority. It's could be how they were raised, it could be internet culture where we get our information, but I think that's a really good point, is to know that it's not about you, it is about the company you're working for, it's the project you're on, it's about the task that you were hired to do because they hired you for your expertise or your skills in one area. So really make those shine, and then if you are wanting a different situation at some point, you can use those skills you acquired and the knowledge and move somewhere else.
Yeah, no, that's right. But you said it very well. In culture, in very individualistic cultures, where basically the basic unit of the society is the individual, so it's me, it's going to be completely different, and we tend to forget that, well, above the me there is still a structure, and I still need to kind of serve in some way that structure. And as you say, it's not just about me, my personal gain, and things like that. We're a team, we're a workplace, and we work together to do the whole thing better. And it's not just, as you say, it's not just about me.
I think that same advice applies to younger people getting positions of leadership. I've personally seen that a few times, where you have a young person that comes in significantly less experienced, but they have more knowledge. They were hired for a particular skill or a particular thing that they did, and they oversee people that have been in the workforce much longer than them. And that is a divide. So how do you guide that situation when you're dealing with the people that have been in the industry for years, and now all of a sudden they have someone younger that they're having to report to or communicate to? What advice do you have for them?
For them, well, it's don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And yes, yeah, it happens. Contribute to the team. Yes, you may not be the leader, but contribute. Share your knowledge. A team leader should be a leader. So that young person with less experience, and if it's a good leader, that person should realize they don't have the required experience. They might have some skills and things like that, but they should realize that people in their team, and especially more experienced people in their team, are really, really great assets.
Mhm.
And so basically they should definitely involve these people. And so if that's not the case, well, an honest discussion,
Mhm.
basically an honest discussion.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That makes sense, and maybe a good perspective to look at it is from that of, okay, they might have this one skill, this leadership skill that they're really well versed or really strong in, but they might not be really strong in project management yet, but the company, the owners, the stakeholders saw potential in that individual. So the people that have more experience that are now under that leadership, they can work with that person and try and develop their skills as well as maybe take some things away from that person as well.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah. No, that's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
Timothy said, great conversation with boomers happens over espresso martinis. Gonna interject. Great conversations with Lauren also happens over espresso martinis. I'll take coffee any time of the day. Why settle for regular coffee when you can have a cup that keeps you moving forward? Caffeine plus a little kick equals big ideas. History proves it, so why not sip and strategize your way to success? So let's talk about that for just a second. Whenever you're working with teams and you're helping them build a stronger relationship with each other, because that does go hand in hand with communication,
Yeah.
are there any team building exercises that you recommend or things that a company can do, a team can do to really work on their cohesion? Or do you think that stuff really doesn't work? It's just kind of a perk of the job?
Well, some doesn't work.
Give me examples.
Well, it's, if you say, oh, we're going to go on a retreat for a day or 2 days and we'll have a team building activities, that's great, and people, they're doing it and things like that, they will say, yeah, it's great and things like that, and then they come back maybe for a few days, that will be great. But then if nothing changes in the organization, really it just goes back to normal. So it's in that sense, like kind of any kind of training, you're out of the classroom.
Yeah.
So I would say for that, it's not about, well, of course there are some activities, but it's not just about the activities, it's really about the mindset, and it's really about being consistent with the thing. So it's not, oh, we're going to have a big thing and then kind of back to normal, and or thinking that it's going to be happy forever after. No, but try to build it, and basically let people open a little bit. So just quick team meetings, just having team meetings where you might discuss other things than work, and something very important is that in project management, like you have you have a project charter towards the beginning, basically a kind of high level document that explains the big characteristics of the project. You can have a team charter, and that basically, so you build that with the team, okay, and basically that will describe all the kind of, don't like to say rules, but all kind of behaviors and things like that, on how are we going to work together, how are we going to communicate together. And basically it is built together, and you end up with a set of whatever rules, behaviors, and things you're going to do, things that are acceptable, not acceptable, that everybody agrees to, because it has been done, together. And so say, okay, yeah, we all feel comfortable with that. And then, yeah, it's just to implement. So as a team leader, check in regularly with your people, and so it's more these little kind of daily steps that will instill trust and confidence between the team members, and that will open the communication rather than a big bash team building activities. And so that would be my advice.
It sounds like it just boils down to the importance of autonomy, having everybody feel as if they have a say in how they do their job, because they are the expert in their one little area, their one little skill that they have, maybe multiple. But
Yeah.
giving somebody autonomy in the workplace seems
Yeah.
to be a really beneficial thing, no matter if you're in construction, project management, all the way into my company. I think that's a big thing that we work on significantly, is everybody having that autonomy, that the owner doesn't know best. The CEO, we don't know best. We do not know. So it's great to give people that voice.
Yeah. That reminds me, when you said autonomy, about actually a model which is called the SCARF model. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. The kind of it's a model to kind of describes what is important to people. And so in terms of communication, in terms of relationship, these are things that you need to make sure that they are aligned with everybody in the team. And so SCARF stands, so S is for status. Okay, so basically make sure that people, if they like statuses are recognized and things like that, or how people deal with status. The second thing is certainty. People want to be clear about what they have to do, what they need to do, what's in it for them, and certainty, a clear direction, and clarity. Certainty, clarity. Then you talked about autonomy. So yeah, go ahead, let your team decide on what they can decide. You don't have to decide everything. Give them some power, give them some autonomy. And then the one is relatedness. And so basically that the kind, a belonging, that people need to feel that they can relate to the other people in the group. They relate to them. There's a sense of belonging into that. And the final one, the F, is for fairness. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it is for fairness. And fairness is completely subjective. Okay, so again, you have to figure out what is fair for the team and what is not fair for the team.
I like that. So status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness.
Yeah.
How often is it important for a team to go through this model and really audit what they're doing? Is maybe at the beginning of every project? Do you recommend they do it throughout?
No, probably doing it, yes, toward the beginning of the project. Yeah, like when you develop, for instance, your team charter. So to understand how important these various aspects are for each people. Okay, and so yes, and then usually these are characteristics that do not evolve very quickly. Because it's a lot of it is cultural, whether we think that status or title are important. Usually it's cultural. Certainty might be a little bit more of a personal trait, but again, these are not things that are going to change rapidly. Okay, the thing that here might change more rapidly, and that is in a way that you can move, is the relatedness. Okay, that how can you make the people in the team really relate to each other and bind to each other. And this is linked to fairness, to this will be different. But I would say status, certainty, autonomy, usually, we see it in a certain way. And usually that doesn't change much during our life. So once you've done it at the beginning of the project, usually, but yes, if you see that it doesn't work, well, okay, go back to the whiteboard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is almost just to make sure that I'm understanding. So if, let's say we have a situation where you have somebody on your team that's really questioning the legitimacy of your project, what you're doing, your team member skills, all of that, then you can look at that. You can look at that scenario, and then you can then look at this model and say, okay, it's status. So the social or professional position and authority, we need to improve on that. Is that correct?
Yes, it could be definitely. So that could be why this team members is bringing this conflict, because that team member might feel they are not recognized at their correct value, at their correct status. So you need to understand, and each time, it's easy in project, we often talk about difficult stakeholders. Okay, that's a kind of catchphrase. But usually people are not difficult because they want to be difficult, just for the sake of it. It's that behind that there is something, there is a reason, they have a concern, there's something they don't understand, or they don't know, or they're not comfortable about it, they have different views. And so it's to engage that discussion, to understand the reason behind that, and then to work on the reason, on, okay, how can we improve person?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I'll go ahead and remove that. That was very interesting. Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
So I want a quick story time. We still have about 10 minutes left. So I want to hear about a time, if you can tell me about a time where you've gone into a company. You don't need to give defining details, but you've gone into a company. I want to know the situation that you walked into, and just maybe one of the craziest situations. Like, oh my gosh, you probably thought to yourself, I don't know how I'm going to help them fix this. This is a mess. And I want to know about that process and how you ended up helping them to resolve their communication situations.
Well, I'm actually going to take the example of when I began as a project manager. Okay. And so I was not at all in project management, as you mentioned. I was in research and teaching. But obviously in research, you manage research projects, but you don't think you manage projects. You don't think about it in that way. But then I say, I want to go into formal project management. And I got my first job as a project manager. It was in a program, so different projects going on, and that program had been stopped because it was not working at all. And basically there was a complete miscommunication between the project managers, business analysts, and things like that, and the stakeholders. Okay. A good example of actually lack of communication, as all what people would see on documents, and okay, sign that off. That's what you said to us, sign that off, and that. And so they stopped, and they decided to begin with a different crew. And so there I was, part of the crew, as one of the project managers. And so we kind of had to rekindle that program, and particularly rekindle the trust of the people, of the stakeholders in that program, because either people just didn't know. It was a huge thing for the organization, but people just didn't know about it. And it had come to the point where people who knew it was all negative. Okay. And so negative rumors were spreading all over the place and things like that. So it was really a very, very big, very, very big job. And so it's, it's then that all that communication. So basically the thing what we did to rescue that was really to go and talk to people, because it was quite varied stakeholders, but within one organization. So we could go and talk to people and explain to them and ask for their feedback and things like that. And all along, not just at the beginning, but all along. And so by just talking to people, by just showing people what we were doing, often I would sit in a big room and people could come, it was open to anybody, and people could come and say, hey, this is what we've been doing. Look at the moment, this is how it works, and things like that, and getting feedback and getting people interested in it, basically. So
it seems like a lot of what could help in situations is not just communication down the chain, is allowing communication to come back up the chain in a respectful manner that's still conducive to the project, and allowing people to really voice what's going on so that you're able to fix it. Because then otherwise you're just going to have people, for lack of a better term, just talking shit and not getting work done because they're so frustrated, and then that snowballs and gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's right. Yeah.
So the project, so you came in, new project manager, and things ended up resolving themselves as you started communicating and talking to people.
No, it took time, and that in itself can bring new challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course then people were getting interested and they were saying, oh, and what about that? Could we do this and could we do that? And so it was, I can see in your comment, Timothy, that you're talking about balancing client expectations, and suddenly that was a big thing. So it has its challenges too, but at least slowly we got people on board. We got people to believe again in the project, and most importantly, people to use what the project was delivering. Okay, some value at the end, because that's the key to the project, basically, to deliver value.
Absolutely. And one final question for you. Do you think there is a point where you can ask for too much feedback from your team? Is there a point where because you said that at the beginning, we were talking about how you want to make sure that you are communicating all the necessary information to all the necessary people, and not everybody needs all the information. But is there a point where you can swing to the opposite end and ask too many opinions and then confuse the project? How do people balance that?
That's right. So that's why you need to understand your stakeholders, and you need to understand, in a way, if I can say, who to speak to. Okay. It's right that you could ask too many people, and then you end up with plenty of different things. And so yes, but then when also you ask feedback, you need to be really clear what you're going to do with that feedback. Okay. And so very clear. Well, or if somebody comes up, oh no, could we have that, and things like that. And so you have to explain the process, how it's going to work, and things like that. So you need to be really clear what you're going to do with the feedback. And yes, sometimes it's time, because a lot of projects can be under pressure, time pressure, money pressure. and especially with your team, yeah, there might be some times I say, guys, no time for discussions. Decision taken. We're doing this, and that's it. And yes, sometimes, especially in times of of crisis, for one decision, a decision has to be made. And okay, you want still to listen to make sure that you have enough information, but then at some point say that's it. No, decide. This is what we're gonna do. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Boils down to that leadership, I think that
Yeah,
we're
absolutely, yes. But no decision and things like that by consensus. There's a time for that, but not everything can be done by a consensus within the team. No.
Absolutely. Well, Nadège, our time has flown by. We're already at an hour. Can you tell people, if they want to know more, they want to continue to dive into this topic of communication, because we truly just touched the surface, where can they find you?
The easiest is on LinkedIn, so they can just contact me on LinkedIn.
Okay, yeah. Fantastic. And you want to plug your podcast real quick? I know you do have a show. I've listened to a few episodes. It's phenomenal. Where can they listen to that?
Thank you. So you can listen to it on all main platforms. And if you look for the Communication and Culture podcast.
Communication and Culture podcast. Well, it has been so fantastic having you on the show. I appreciate it. I think that we've had a lot of amazing comments. Thank you, Vanessa, Babadell, and Timothy, for really engaging with us today. And until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Happy April Fools. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.